Welcome to Stay Home, Stay Focused. I am Jack Moline. I'm the president of Interfaith Alliance. And my guest today is Tahil Sharma, who is the regional coordinator for United Religions Initiative. And that's a lot to unpack, and we're going to get to all of it. But first of all, Tahil, the question I ask each of my guests at the beginning, how are you doing?
Jack, I'm holding up. This has been a very personal challenge for the past month, getting to be in a space of physical isolation from my own parents that I live with currently. Um, I feel the personal brunt of this entire situation because I've had cases of COVID in my family. My parents have been furloughed, and I feel a great burden, but also a great sense of energy to really get on the ground and do a lot of work in any capacity.
And you are in perhaps the most unusual situation of anybody that at least I've talked with in the last few weeks on these webcasts, and that you actually started this job the day that the pandemic was declared.
Yes, that's right. It was a strange day to sort of start things off with my supervisor who told me, we're just going to have to take this one step at a time. Thankfully, the United Religions Initiative is definitely ahead of the curve in its own way because it's been doing online and digital work for years now. And my job is remote anyway. So a lot of things just actually ended up being a best case scenario put together.
So you have your work, obviously, but what are you doing to keep yourself focused during the time that you're not sitting behind your computer?
What I try to do usually is try to find a balance between my contemplative and activist side. And currently, the activist side, who wants to be on the ground helping people in person, can't really do much. So I'm trying to take hold of digital spaces to be able to support fundraising, support dialogue, to be able to push back against fake news and propaganda, and to be able to find a space for people to see hope and to become hope. So my contemplative side of it is actually on overdrive right now, as a lot of discussions on seeking space for digital worship to being able to find resources that can help people through these difficult times has become my main focus.
So I'd like the people who are watching and listening to know a little bit about you. Can you talk about your personal background and how you found your way into interfaith work?
Absolutely. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My parents are Indian. They came from India in the late 1980s. And I come from a dual religious background. So my father's side of the family is Hindu, and my mother's side of the family is Sikh. And as a contemplative sort of interfaith practitioner, I kind of try to strike a balance between both of those faith traditions. Um, and I actually didn't think about how that intersecting identity would influence me until 2012 when the Sikh temple in Oak Creek, Wisconsin was attacked by a white supremacist. A lot of identities, including national and ethnic, started coming into question when I didn't feel comfortable really expressing them together. But one thing that I realized was that my identity was going to be challenged in such a terrible way, but I had to push back because I not only was dealing with this travesty, I was dealing with the larger narrative of white supremacy, which meant that it wanted me to be scared, disappointed, angry, and apathetic. And I couldn't do any of those things. If I was going to help, I was going to help everyone that was marginalized and oppressed, and I would stand with them on the front line.
So that helps us to understand a little bit what drew you to United Religions Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have a suspicion that, like Interfaith Alliance, people hear the name of the organization and think that's a great idea, but they have no idea what we do, right? So
Right.
why don't you tell us what United Religions Initiative is?
Absolutely. United Religions Initiative is the world's largest interfaith grassroots organization and network. We have 1,050 chapters in 108 countries. And that's not a small task for us as regional coordinators. I have the privilege of being the regional coordinator for North America, which means in 3 countries, I have a jurisdiction of about 90 chapters.
Yeah,
So
Americans
these
walk
first
into your
couple,
regional coordinator and they think you've got, Orange County in California, but you
right.
actually have a quarter of the globe under your jurisdiction.
Exactly. And that's 90 different organizations that are doing 90 different things, and they create 90 different definitions of what interfaith is. And that's kind of the beauty of the work that I do, getting to know these communities who are on the ground, who might be in these digital spaces to figure out what do people need? What are people's needs? And me as a regional coordinator, I get to ask them what their community's needs are in the midst of this pandemic. Do they need a soundboard that supports them with larger decision making throughout the year? Do they need someone to discuss ideas and challenges about certain ways events can be done? Or do they really need a space to talk to someone who can give them hope, who can help restore hope in them in the midst of so many overlapping challenges?
So the organization itself is really the brainchild of Bishop Swing.
Mhm.
Can you talk about him a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Bishop Swing used to be the uh, bishop of the Diocese of California for the Episcopal Church. And in his discussions and understandings of what was happening in the world, one of the questions that he had was about, this idea of the United Nations, where the people of the world are able to gather and be represented. And he asked the question, well, why don't we have something like that for the world's religions? And in the late 90s, that's what ended up creating the United Religions Initiative, where we have a space for the world's faith leaders and leaders of many indigenous and spiritual communities can gather and strive for justice, peace, and healing.
We uh, we also began in the late 90s, as did the Muslim Public Affairs Council and any number of other organizations. It seemed to be a fertile time
Mhm,
for faith-based organizations
mhm,
forming in the United States.
mhm,
We formed very much in reaction to organization that was going on in the right-wing political religious community. Uh,
mhm.
did that have any influence on United Religions Initiative, or was it simply an independent recognition that no such organization existed worldwide?
I think it was partly the independent recognition, but I think more importantly, it was the early conversation about creating connection between communities across the world. I think historically speaking, looking at the interfaith movement, it can't really be drawn to certain events or catalysts like the Parliament of the World's Religions in 1893. But there have been moments of religious harmony and coexistence that have existed for centuries before. So being able to actually look at all of these communities and say, there isn't something that really connects all of them, and to establish an organization like this that makes it possible is just, till now, it just leaves me without words.
How do how do groups of people come together and find their way into United Religions Initiative?
That's a great question. Usually, if an organization has about 3 representative traditions or more and has about 7 people within their membership, they're able to go through what's called an appreciative inquiry, where folks are from the global staff office are able to talk to and get to know these organizations and what they do. In understanding their context, their nuances, and their ability to do the work that they're interested in doing. The larger set of global trustees have a committee which allows them to think about if this organization is able to be a part of our community at large at URI.
Very nice. And do you have organizers, or do you depend on people reaching out to you?
It's a mix. It's a mixed effort. So here in North America, for example, part of my work is to strive to find more chapters, which we call cooperation circles. We work with a special leadership council of people who are involved with different cooperation circles to figure out the strategy for North America, as well as folks in our global support office who are trying to look for those key organizations and communities that are looking to be interested in this larger network. It's very key that we look at this through a lens of interconnectedness and interdependence
Sure.
when we're trying to say what people are looking for.
And in your jurisdiction or your region,
Mhm.
can you tell us about some of the initiatives that you've been impressed with? Um, See if you can find us one from each of the three major countries that you're taking care of.
Yeah, absolutely. In the process of being in just finishing my first month with this organization, I have not been able to contact everyone because
I
it's been a
imagine.
work in progress. But what I can say though is there's an organization in Santa Barbara County called the Interfaith Initiative for Santa Barbara County that was doing an initiative called Showers of Blessing, where they would help create trailers of showers for the homeless within the county. One would think that in the midst of so much going on, especially with the risk to public health, that they wouldn't be able to actually do their work. But lo and behold, they've been able to actually adapt to changing locations and circumstances, and actually have been fundraising more to be able to help shower and actually give necessities to the homeless communities that are in the county.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrific.
Mm-hmm.
So let me shift a little bit to the philosophical from the practical.
Sure.
Why is it a United Religions initiative? What
Mm.
is the role of religion in the world, in the vision that Bishop Swing had, in the vision that the staff has? Why religion?
You know, Rabbi Tech, it's a very difficult question to answer actually, because I think it encompasses more than just this idea of the institution of religion. I think it's supposed to encompass the idea of belief and spirit and the ability to connect with others.
Hmm.
And oftentimes the realm of religion is what most often connects people. And in the opportunity to build connection and to build community, we also know that religion has not had the best repertoire historically,
On occasion.
on occasion. So, more importantly, it is about restoring the wholeness of what religion can and should be amidst so many communities and individuals that happen to be practitioners. And it's also to mention that this should include those that are spiritual, those that are based in indigenous traditions, and also those that are atheist, secular, humanist, and agnostic. The realm of belief is so vast that it's not fair to give God only one space to exist, or for a God or a higher power to exist. And
So
if we're to work on
what
this human family, I'm
one
sorry.
doesn't need to profess a faith, or for that matter, a particular faith, in order to be involved in the initiatives that come under the URI umbrella.
That's right. That is absolutely right.
Can you can you imagine a circumstance in which a faith community or a profession of faith would be excluded from cooperating with URI initiatives?
Oh, no, I can't. I really can't. And it's because that's the conversation we're trying to have here. How is interfaith not just a movement, but a part of daily life? That's what matters. That's what we're trying to focus on and really use that energy to be able to say that this is a space for everyone to help work with others across difference to make the world a better place.
When we were forming Interfaith Alliance many
Mhm,
years ago, back in the 90s, one
mhm,
of the conversations we had, and I grant you, it was a generation ago, it was a different time, was about what the nature of faith was in the title Interfaith Alliance. There
mm,
were groups that wanted to join us that were not mainstream, at least at the time, including
mm,
people who were not professing a theistic approach to religious life, not just
mhm,
Buddhists, but people who had what they would call pagan or naturalist faiths. And
mm,
that conversation has progressed significantly I think in all quarters. But I don't know whether you've had my experience. There are yet some people who have dug their heels in even deeper to suggest that there is a binary that exists between people who affirm God in one form or in whatever form, and people who will not affirm a divinity of any kind in their pursuit of the right and the good in the world. So it's a hazard that an organization with religion in its name and an organization with faith in its name has to deal with, because what we're really talking about is a spiritual conscience, and everybody's got one of those. It just depends on where they take them. So now I'm going to go to something now, Tahil, that is completely off the subject, except that you and I deal with a world in which John Lennon's song Imagine is enormously popular, but presents a vision of the world which there is no religion, no borders, none of the things that create the communities that we're trying to bring together. If someone said to you, what do you think of Imagine? What would your response be? Stumped you, huh?
A bit, yeah. Honestly, I would tell them that I could wish the same. But in a world that we're living now, let's try to make the best of things and take it one step at a time. We know that differences and divisions are very much in place and have been like that for centuries. And we know that in spaces of interfaith oftentimes, or even in general society, we don't like to address the elephants in the room. It's very easy to commit to a kumbaya sentiment when you're not acknowledging the wealth gap, the lack of health insurance, homelessness, racism, bigotry, and xenophobia. All of those things are very easy to dismiss if you're just trying to say we should all just get along and be one. But the fact of the matter is, if we wanted to strive for a song like John Lennon's Imagine, then we would have to address the elephants in the room and get a little uncomfortable. And I don't know if the world is ready for that, but I certainly am.
So we have to start with Paul McCartney and talk about the world in which we're living.
Right. Exactly right. Exactly.
Very good. How can people get involved in United Religions Initiative if they want to?
There are multiple ways. Thank you for asking. If you visit uri.org, it's one of the shortest URLs you can write.
Interfaith Alliance takes up a little more space.
Yes. People are more than welcome to see the work that we're doing around the world. And if you type in uri.org/coronavirus, you'll be able to see what people are doing right now during the pandemic, including resources, including stories of cooperation circles that are doing work on the ground. And you can find us on social media too.
Right. And the Interfaith Alliance is a strictly domestic organization. It's worth emphasizing again that URI is really all over the world. I've been to the website, and it is really remarkable some of the places where this notion of collective action has become embedded in societies that you and I, as residents of the United States, might imagine do not have strong interfaith efforts. But around the world, this philosophy has really penetrated, which is great.
Absolutely. And if people are looking for something more domestic, you can go to urinorthamerica.org. Now our URLs might compete in length. But you're able to check out the communities that we have in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and really get a sense of the communities that you want to work with that might be near you.
That's great. That's great. Mm-hmm. The last thing I always ask my partners in conversation is to offer some words that will help inspire and engage people in the midst of their concern about their own health and the well-being of their loved ones. What can you offer them to inspire and engage them at this time?
The thing that I want to offer is, don't wait to look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Be the light that illuminates the tunnel. In the midst of so many terrible things going on, we have each other and the capacity to do so much. If we can continue to be the hope that we wish to see in each other and in the world, we might have a better chance of surviving this. Find joy, find that relentless optimism that I get from my Sikh tradition of Chardi Kala, that reminds us that even in the midst of the most terrible things, you have to find that silver lining because it'll help you get through the storm and it too shall pass.
Thanks. I mean, I will say to those of you who've been following this series over the last few weeks, I do not prompt my guests to say anything, and so these segments are often interchangeable. You have no idea if you're just joining us whether I'm talking to Tahil on the day that you're watching this or if I talked to him 3 weeks ago. But what you've just articulated, Tahil, is what we have heard from so many of my guests. I would venture to say, if not all of them, pretty much all of them, that this goodness, this kindness, this optimism is the number one thing that will see us through this pandemic. Tahil Sharma of United Religions Initiative, thank you for being my guest today. And to those of you watching and listening at home, stay focused.